or a little notice may pop up for you. Great. I'll start with a welcome again one more time. I'm so glad you can all be here today. Again, my name is Hannah Locke, and I'm the Best Starts Program Manager and Innovation Supports Lead, sort of leading this body of work. Today, I'm going to be sharing about the Prenatal to 5 Innovation Supports upcoming requests for qualifications. We have a short time together, so I will try to slow down. Feel free to jump in if I'm talking too fast, but there's good information, and I also want to make sure that there's time for question and answer as well. So I'm going to start by sharing just a little bit more about the strategy itself, which is the Best Starts for Kids Prenatal to 5 Innovation Support Strategy, and then dive a little bit more into what those supports look like as it relates to the request for qualifications, which is really about building this innovation supports team who kind of co-lead and really offer these supports as the strategy aims to. And then, like I mentioned, we'll try to prioritize time for questions and answers from you all. Feel free if anything comes up throughout to type something in the chat or to take yourself off mute as well. Okay. So again, this is about the Prenatal to 5 Innovation Support Strategy. This is just one of many BSK strategies focused on reaching families prenatally to age 5 so that children and families are happy, healthy, safe, and thriving. This strategy itself builds off of work done in the first iteration of Best Starts for Kids, the first levy, and in this second levy of Best Starts for Kids has shifted slightly, but I'll talk really from where it's at now as it pertains to the work ahead of us. To start, it's helpful if we can hold in mind some underlying assumptions, values, and definitions that guide this work and this strategy. So at Best Starts, as you know, if you're familiar with our work, we acknowledge that in order to reach our goals, we must address existing inequities within our current structures and systems. So one example of that is the acknowledgement that we know that quote unquote evidence-based and evidence-informed program models out there serving community really don't work for all of community, particularly BIPOC communities. We look at who those programs were designed for, who tends to be leading them. Oftentimes there's folks that really, their needs are not being met through those evidence-based or evidence-informed models. We also know that communities are best at identifying their specific challenges and the response and solutions to those challenges. And I think one exciting element about Best Starts has been really the promotion and investment in innovative community designed programs who are meeting those needs. One thing that can be helpful in oftentimes when I talk about innovation, folks ask, what do you mean by that? How are you defining innovation? And so I wanted to give some context before providing more about the strategy is that we're looking at innovation as both a verb, so the act or the process of designing programming or ideas, the process of planning for getting things ready, so that installing and then piloting or implementing something new for the first time. We also look at innovation and use it as a noun. So talking about an innovation as that specific approach or program that has been community designed, a project or a policy change as well. It could be something that's brand new, something that's been adapted, or something that's existing but is being applied in a different context. And another assumption we take forward through this strategy is that this process of doing this work is tough. There's a lot of challenges that come up. For anything, if you've ever tried something new, you know that you're bound to meet with some challenges along the way. And these are the pieces that we hold in mind when thinking about the work of this strategy. So the overarching goal really here is to partner with community-based organizations who are funded through Best Starts for Kids Prenatal to 5 strategies in order to support those groups as they walk through this process of doing this innovative work, as they are implementing programs that they have designed with community input, as they are getting ready to implement programs for the first time. This strategy goal at the heart is to walk alongside community partners and programs as they're doing this challenging work and be there as a supportive partner. One of the ways that we're doing that is drawing from and utilizing an existing framework from a field called implementation science, as well as the field of equity-based design, in order to kind of guide the way that those supports, where they focus, and some of the key concepts from that. So I'm sharing here the framework that we've selected. I'm not going to go into all the details. Those will come out in the requests for qualifications, and for anyone interested in becoming part of the supports team, understanding and having experience with this framework is not a prerequisite that is required at all. But I wanted to be transparent that part of the strategy will utilize this grounding framework as a way to approach the way the supports will be aligned and delivered, of course, in partnership with our partners, the community-based organizations. And something neat about this framework that we used it in the first time around with Best Starts for Kids, supporting innovative programs, and along the way learned that there were places where the framework wasn't really matching either Best Starts values or wasn't as meaningful for our partners. And so we've been able to adapt the framework as we move along, and would intend to do that and continue to do that with new partners in this new iteration of the levy. And a shout out to a couple of folks in the room who were part of this initial innovative work in the first Best Starts for Kids levy, who have experience using this framework, and maybe there'll be opportunity later if you want to share your experience with that. So applying the framework to provide supports, this strategy is really focusing on, again, partnering with community-based orgs within Best Starts for Kids, who are really the ones on the ground making Best Starts what it is. You might wonder, so, okay, you have this framework and these organizations doing this innovative community design work, piloting their ideas. What does that look like to support them along the way? I think one learning that we've had, or maybe obvious, is that there's no one way to support one another. And so in our first iteration of supporting innovation, we found that shared learning, so coming together, convening groups of program staff doing this work, was a huge assist and support for those doing the work. We provided workshops and training, tools and resources when necessary, sitting down and assisting organizations both on the individual and group level to really be there where they're at in terms of what it takes and where they're at in the process of whether it's designing or trying out their programs for the first time. So that's kind of the approach. Again, I'm not going to go too into the weeds with what the topics here listed are, but wanted to offer a little bit of an overview or an idea of what innovation supports could look like, what the innovation supports team would be focusing on. And this graphic here shows the different phases that groups tend to go through when they are implementing a new program or new project, doing something for the first time. So they start with this design phase, an example of a focus area for support might be who needs to be on the team, who should be at the table. How will you engage with community or conduct listening sessions to hear back from community what they think about your ideas? And a huge and so part of this innovation support strategy will walk through each of these phases as programs go from designing to then developing, getting into more of the details of what are the nuts and bolts of their program. What do they need in terms of materials, or what are the different aspects of the work that they need to lay out before they're ready to actually start delivering services. And then also to support them in the first months to up to a year of when they are implementing the program and actually delivering the services in community. A huge area for support that we saw in the first time around was really this evaluation and the point of making changes based off of those learnings. And that's really based off of this, of the framework, which really looks at defining what it is that programs are doing, asking what questions do you have? What do you want to learn about your program idea or your innovation? And then how can we make changes based off of what you're learning, which in a responsive way, which in history of the way that we have done the status quo of programming is to maybe do like a long-term longitudinal study. And then by the time you do that, there's families whose needs are not being met. And so the idea here is to, as you're learning, to adapt as fast or as responsively as makes sense so that the needs of community are being met in a more effective way. So that's the basis of like, what is innovation supports? What does that look like in the context of Best Starts for Kids? And a huge component of that is the team of who will be providing those supports, who will be partnering with the community-based organizations, walking with them along the way as they innovate. And so this request for qualifications, again, is really about building, seeking qualified applicants to build up this team who will become the innovation supports team and really provide, lead those workshops, sit down and do individual supports, provide tools and resources and referrals for CBOs who are implementing innovative programs. We seek to build an innovation supports team to center relationship, collaborate, and share power. This is, I can't stress enough, will be a team. So in the request for qualifications, we might have individuals apply, we might have organizations who want to make up a team, but it's really relationship led, and we'll be really approaching the work very closely in collaboration with myself and other Best Start staff, as well as our partner at the University of Washington, who brings the expertise of the Ideas Impact Framework. Team members will share knowledge and expertise and build upon each team member's strengths and assets. So if we look back at the topics and range of types of supports that CBOs might seek, we think about how can the team meet that need. We don't need one individual to have expertise in each of those areas, but we'll really look at how the team can be responsive to the needs of programs. The team will apply that shared framework and shared values to further racial equity. So as I mentioned, how can we continue to adapt the way that we do work so it's in alignment with Best Start's values? And the team, of course, will partner with community-based organizations and engage in a variety of supports as they lead innovative programming for families. So this strategy, again, is really focused on how can we support and hold community-based organizations as they're doing this important work. And as the community, in the program and innovation process, folks are co-creating, co-designing with community and learning and adapting. So will this team. I can't stress enough of what I've learned as staff in the past 5 years, that things don't always go right the first time. And so we need to check in repeatedly, work with our community partners, learn from them, and then adapt so that we're meeting needs as best as possible. So I tried my best to get through as fast as possible. There's about 10 minutes left for questions.
My name is Rietta Dawes. I'm from Voices of Tomorrow. And my question is, how is this different than the current program that exists? You mentioned that this is slightly different than the last RFQ.
Yeah, so in the first iteration of the levy, this was actually called the Innovation Fund, and it was a little bit different. So there was a cohort of organizations who were funded to do innovative work and received these supports in the same way. One thing that we learn in conversation and reflection, both internally and from hearing from our partners, is that the Innovation Fund was not the only space where innovative program design and pilot programs were coming from within Best Starts. We know that almost every strategy across this initiative is doing innovative work, community designed work, and not necessarily evidence-based programs. And so the main change here is that this strategy will now focus on similar, if you're very familiar with Best Starts for Kids, there's another strategy offering capacity building and technical assistance. This strategy, similar to that one, will be open to existing Best Starts programs and community-based organizations who are doing innovative work in the prenatal to 5 space. So the approach is different than it was in the first levy in order to align with the existing work that we know is happening and with the prenatal to 5 space at Best Starts for Kids. Great question. And I will note, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna, this is Lori Bohm from Child Care Resources. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around this. Is this for organizations that want to create something innovative, or is it for people who want to support the innovations that others are doing? Is it for organizations? Is it for people, individuals? I guess I'm just getting a little lost in this. Yeah, thank you. That's a really important distinction here. So this is, while as a request for qualifications, the intention of this RFQ is to invite applicants who would be providing the innovation supports, knowing that, so as similar to capacity building for other Best Starts for Kids programs. And so innovative if you are sitting there and you're like, I have an innovative program idea that I would love Best Starts to fund, those are going to fall within the other prenatal to 5 strategies. So this specific RFQ is really focused on folks who will come together as a team to support organizations in creating a theory of change, for example, in looking at evaluation and in adapting their innovative programs. And will this be organizations that would be doing this, or individuals within organizations?
Great question. And a lot of these details as well will be in the come out in the RFQ itself. So I did want to note that there's probably a lot of details that I'm missing here, and those will come out later. Both individuals or organizations could apply to the request for qualifications. And so the team that is as a result selected could be from consist of private consultants, could be a few folks who are on staff at a nonprofit or other consulting agency, but would be stepping in with meeting some of those areas of expertise and knowledge. For example, somebody who's managed a program in the early childhood space before and could support others doing that. Somebody who has expertise in a program evaluation with community. Those are the types of things that team would bring together to lead this work. Great, I see a question in the chat. Will the innovation team be providing support to grantees in various P5 strategies or just in the innovation fund strategy? Great question. So the major shift for this work in the second iteration of the levy is that the innovation supports team will be providing support to grantees in other prenatal to 5 strategies. The fund itself actually no longer exists as it had in the past. So we'll be focused on supporting other strategy areas such as community designed home-based services or parent caregiver information supports, childcare consultation, perhaps some of the childcare work coming through. And those RFPs for that work will come later in the levy. I think there was a session this morning for community-based parenting. And the RFQ is set to come out sometime either the end of this month or in February. I think for many of you, I sent an email with the information, but I'll put my email in the chat. If you have any follow-up specific questions that come up before the RFQ is released, I can share as many details as I'm able. Once it is released, there's sort of a more formal process with that. Another question coming through in the chat, is this for contractors, vendors? What would be qualifications? Great question. So again, these details will be outlined in the RFQ document. One thing that we learned is that, again, in keeping in mind that there will be a team supporting groups, is that we can have a variety of experiences and different expertise making up that team to be able to meet the needs of our programs. And so the main eligibility requirements will be folks that are really have relationship from community, bring a strong race equity and social justice lens to the work, and can really hold and align with our Best Starts for Kids values. Most likely we'll be looking for folks with some experience in evaluation, program evaluation with community, and then at least one or more of some of the other topic areas such as program management, co-creating or engaging community to design programs, those types of pieces. And I can also follow up. I know that some of the slides had a lot of information. I'm happy to share that slide deck out after today's session. Another question in the chat, could you mention the other prenatal to 5 categories this RFQ would support? So one thing I know, the ones that are set to be supported by Innovation Supports team are the parent caregiver information supports, new grantees coming in, the community design home-based services, new programs coming in, I don't know. The prenatal, some of the prenatal work. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact wording of that on the tip of my tongue, and the childcare consultation work. And there should be some, so those groups will be teamed immediately as part of a cohort. And then there will be opportunities for other folks who maybe their strategy isn't necessarily set up to have intensive supports, but the workshops should be open to, my hope is that the workshops will be open to any prenatal to 5 Best Starts partner who's interested, so that folks who maybe aren't as interested in an intensive support through a few years might want to sit down and attend a workshop to learn more about creating a theory of change for their program, or creating an evaluation plan that really is responsive to learning deeply about the program that they're designing. We have about 1 more minute left. Let's see any more questions coming through. But again, please reach out if you have any follow-up questions from today's session. I would love to chat further, and we'll be sure to follow up today's session with the PowerPoint if that's helpful for folks. Great, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your time.